Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Erin Parker. Maybe you saw me at the general session. So I am from PANDA, which is the Minnesota AB Physical and Non-Apparent Disability Assistance Program. And today we are going to be um, doing a workshop here on suicide prevention, promoting hope, problem solving, and resiliency. Um, this can be a touchy subject, so I just want to make sure that people know, that it's okay to have feelings about this, and if you need to step away at any time, um, if necessary, do so. So I just want to quickly, I always like to show the Panda website, and I am just going to kind of briefly go through this because I did so at the general session also. But one of the things I want to just show you real quickly here is these point out the mental wellness tip sheets in all the different languages. And then also our section on mental health, which gives some great instructional strategies, classroom challenges to expect, and a lot of resources here, which we will also be talking about more as we go forward. And let me just make it full screen again. So we might get to more of that, but that is definitely a resource for you, our website here. So. All right, so today our objectives are to understand the prevalence of suicide, to explore the causes, risk factors, and warning signs, to learn a suicide prevention method and gain suicide prevention resources, and then brainstorm proactive suicide prevention measures for the classroom, which is important, and kind of taking that hope part and trying to be proactive and positive in the face of this. And so again, this disclaimer, this is not intended to diagnose or provide therapy to individuals, of course. Suicide and death are taboo topics in many cultures, even a little bit in our own, but we will talk about some cultural differences when it comes to this topic, and mental health, of course. And, it can be kind of frightening to think about someone who, wants to die. So that can be hard, and it can trigger uncomfortable feelings. Also, especially if you've had some of that in your family, um, so, and then, step away, of course, if feel free to do that if necessary, and please seek professional help if needed. Just like to kind of start with that. All right, we're going to start here then with the prevalence of suicide in Minnesota, just to get some idea of what it looks like here. Suicide is the 8th leading cause of all deaths in Minnesota, and it is the 10th nationally. There were about 815 deaths by suicide in 2023 in Minnesota. Males make up 80% of suicides, so it's more prevalent in males. Firearms account for about half of all suicides, and American Indians have the highest suicide rate. So when we look here at this next slide, we can kind of get a snapshot into these, differences in Minnesota particularly. So American Indian is much higher than any of the other groups listed. What is the reason for that? Maybe the trauma that they have gone through, alienation, maybe, being marginalized. There's also a very high unemployment rate. and percentage of abuse and those kind of things, which are, you know, factors in this issue. So suicide occurs all over the world, regardless of race or culture. 800,000 people die by suicide worldwide each year, which is a lot of people. Increased stress is common when immigrants come to the US. So if we're thinking about US numbers, that can cause a lot of isolation and mental health challenges for immigrants, which may be students that we are working with. The stigma of mental illness may prevent some immigrants from seeking treatment. And we'll look at that, a few of the cultures that are in Minnesota and kind of what their viewpoints are. So strive to be respectful and affirm cultural and individual values while promoting hope, which is a big part of prevention. And also be aware and careful of the words you use with students from other cultures and seek an interpreter whenever possible. So here are some of the cultural differences of the immigrants we may see and refugees here in Minnesota. And just thinking about what refugees and immigrants go through, you know, when they come to a new country, you know, feeling isolated, they kind of have a breakdown of support, maybe. It's a new culture, a new language. They may have exposure to violence and trauma from the country they came from, and that is one reason, especially for refugees, but many immigrants that come to this country. We may also be aware that, you know, right now there's some fear of deportation and other things they might be going through. If we look at Hispanics, there's about 300,000 in Minnesota from 20 different countries. Some of the cultural relevant issues for them are the thing that it's in their culture, they have a skepticism about taking prescribed medication. And then also the fear of deportation if put in the spotlight. So getting help feels scary to them for those reasons. Hmong is another culture. Depression and other mental illnesses are caused by having lost souls. That's what they believe, many of them, as a culture. They may not understand US terms such as mental means crazy, because that might mean crazy or someone who's kind of a nut to them. So sometimes it's the terms. And then Somali, another culture, generally their culture might believe that depression and anxiety are considered taboo and not discussed. Many believe praying can heal mental illness, and many adults think that they are being punished when they're ill. So those are some things that can be tricky. Yeah, and it's true, just not seeing any way out of whatever situation they might be in because they don't have the resources for those things. So it's tough. So when we talk about suicide, another thing to be thinking about are the people that are affected when a loved one commits suicide. So as you know, data suggests every 40 seconds, someone in the world dies by suicide, and every 41 seconds, someone is left to make sense of it, which can be really, really tough. And anyone who has gone through that can attest to that, but it's tough to deal with in a family or with the loss of a loved one in that way. So, you know, thinking about this and just understanding that, you know, suicide does devastate loved ones and feelings of despair and grief are common. And there's often a lot of shame and guilt about what they may have done to cause or may not have done to prevent, right? And the shame and guilt can make it difficult to talk openly about that. So it can be really, really hard. So this is a video I'd like to share about this idea that's called the ripple effect. But it also shows the ripple effect of what suicide can cause of the people around that person, but also the hope that can come from surviving and moving forward. So I'm going to start this, and hopefully it will work well.
I wish I could show people what it's like to live in this brain. It's not like this all the time. But like you see the bullhorns over there, everything is dangerous. Everyone is out to get you. Everything can hurt you. Cars, buildings, and flowers. It's just part of the deal, man. I was saying to myself, why is this happening to me? Why couldn't I be normal? The last thought before I went over was, jump now! You know, I have auditory hallucinations, and they were just screaming. They were screaming in my head, you must die! You must die now! Jump now! And I did. I was compelled to die. In 4 seconds, I fell 75 miles an hour, 25 stories, and I hit the water.
Nobody thinks about the ones that have to go pick it up. 57 dead bodies had to pick up. People, you were the only one alive.
I heard you coming through the door. You were on the gurney, and you were vocal, and you were basically saying, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
22 American military veterans and active duty servicemen and women are dying by suicide every day. Never forget that they were our heroes too.
I was very nearly a statistic, and the facts are that Aboriginal men are 6 times more likely to die by suicide.
For every one death by suicide, at the very least 115 people are directly affected.
I found out Dwayne took his life. My first initial reactions were, it was my fault. It shattered people's lives. It wasn't just a thing where it changed them for a week or a month or 6 months. It was a lifetime.
We lost our son, Matthew. He's 20 years old.
I wondered if I did something wrong.
In 2008, my brother passed away by suicide. He was only 19 years of age. If he had have realised what that ripple effect, what had happened, he never would have done it.
How does any parent live with that grief? He will always be the son I lost.
When a family endures a suicide, they need help. And in your case, you survived, and I really went through hell.
When I got the call, and since then, I've blamed myself for 15 years now.
You were the first person and a consistent person to ever say, you know, Kevin, you should talk about this.
You stood up and told your story, and there wasn't a dry eye in the whole place.
Today, I travel the globe spreading a message of hope. Why? Because we know it helps people heal.
I was thinking about killing myself. And because of you, I'm living, but yet, because of what you said and everything, I'm able to give back even more.
There are people out there that need to hear from someone who's got the lived experience and who's been in that incredibly dark place.
A groundswell of individuals who say, I'm going to beat this fight. I'm going to win this game. Maybe not every battle, but I'm going to win the war. They try to help other people change their lives. We're trying to reach out to as many communities as humanly possible to help any individual battling that epic brain pain choose a life worth living, even when they're in the darkest of hours. I don't believe we can go see a person and save their life unless you're physically like moving them out the way of a train. But what we can do is instill a glimmer of hope in their brains, and they can see that maybe there's another way, maybe there's another option, and they choose to do the work, because it takes work. It's an art to be well, to save their own lives. And if they can find a way to have that hope to do that, once you're hopeless, that's all lost. You can get suicidal once hopeless occurs. But if you reverse hopelessness, you help change a person's life so they save their own life, so they change everything about their lives, so they decide to live. You are your brothers and sisters' keepers, and if you see someone in terrible emotional, maybe mental pain, please say something. And if one of you is suffering and you're quiet about it, today, tomorrow, the next, ask for help. Tell the truth about your pain, because it is the only way to purge it from your soul. Your life matters to everyone you love, everyone who loves you, everyone who cares about you, and people you haven't even met yet.
Look, Kevin, as I said, one of the greatest things we can do is have that kind of impact on people's lives. It sounds like from what the science shows and what this may accomplish, a lot of lives may be saved.
I hope so. I have now lived 15 years past the day I should have died. And I'm truly grateful for that second chance at life.
Erin, you'll need to unmute now.
Thank you, Marissa. So that was pretty powerful. And to just kind of think about that ripple effect, but also the hope of surviving and this instilling of hope in people that have gone through this. That's good representation. So, letting people know that they're not alone. Suicidal thoughts or actions are a sign of extreme distress, and not just a harmless bid for attention. So they should not be ignored. The number one thing is to not ignore those signs, because that can save lives. 70% of those who attempt suicide have depression. So depression is highly connected to suicide, and many times depression is undiagnosed. So some symptoms may include a wearing away of one's ability to cope or problem solve, feelings of worthlessness, loneliness, hopelessness, isolating from social activities, frequent suicidal thoughts. And then just on more information on depression, you can visit our website under mental health, and we have some good resources there. So, other root causes, pain is the main root cause, and pain comes from a lot of different sources. Oops, sorry. Move the pictures around. So this idea that pain will never go away, and that, there's no end in sight is a common feeling. But, this idea, and we use this acronym HOPE, meaning hold on, pain ends, because pain oftentimes can be temporary if there's some therapy and some other ways of getting help. So some of the main causes are like a history of abuse or neglect, bullying, and that's definitely true in this day and age when we have social media. And, it can be bullying for various reasons. LGBTQ have a much higher rate for this reason. Also, yeah, that's one of those causes. A major crisis. So a lot of for many people that commit suicide, there is they can see that there was a major crisis within 2 weeks of that person's life. And those can be things like, divorce, job loss, can also be military service, going through some crisis through that, whether it's after it's done, PTSD, those kind of things. Chronic pain or serious illness, another common root cause. And just this hopelessness is that common thread of just that things aren't going to get better. So that it's a decision made, and it's not that necessarily people want to end their life, but that they want to end their pain. So it's something to keep in mind. But of course, that's a permanent solution to a temporary problem. As many of us that maybe have been through painful events, we know that we can heal and get past that and move forward. Of course, sometimes with a lot of help, but it's possible. An example of pain, and this is just to kind of start thinking about people that survive, such as like a 15-year-old girl who was raped by her father's friend. When she told her father about what happened, he said, "It's your fault." And she got a horrible case of herpes from the rape. She had no one to talk to. She felt shame and hopelessness, and she thought, I am worthless. Who would want me? She made a suicidal attempt on her life, but survived. Now, as an adult, she has expressed her gratitude that her suicide attempt did not end her life. She got therapy. She got married, had children, and has had a successful career. And yes, I agree, pain is not temporary. And it's not the issue that that it is temporary, but it's the issue that maybe people can work through some of that pain, and it won't seem as hopeless. I guess is a way to look at that. So there are many risk factors. Number one is a previous suicide attempt. Talking, writing, or thinking about death. So that's where, as teachers, we may come across students that might talk or write about death, something to keep in mind. The increased drug and alcohol use or addiction is a way to get through sometimes pain or to numb that pain. And so that can be a risk factor, a warning sign. Giving away possessions, a plan to end their life, and easy access to lethal means. So, having firearms or prescription medications can be a risk factor if they have this plan. So most importantly, don't keep quiet, don't tune out, don't look away. As we're talking about, this is serious, and the most important thing we can do as educators, because that is where we come in to when we hear about this, is to make sure that we ask questions and talk to the person about this. It is also important and may help you to, find out about, be proactive before there is a crisis, is to check with your program manager about the policies and steps on who you should notify if a student does make some suicidal comments. Because that would be good to have that support and to know what to do before that happens. So, as we've been kind of talking about that, just leading up to this idea that don't be afraid to talk about suicide. It's 100% preventable. We can, if we speak out and we reach out. And so listening or hearing, reading these warning signs, I might as well jump off a bridge, or I wish I were dead. I just want to end it all. Huge warning signs. indirect comments, like I'm tired of life. What's the point of going on? Everyone would be better without me. Can be warning signs to keep in mind, and to, talk to that person when they're making those comments a little more. We'll talk a little bit about how to do that. So, steps to prevent suicide. You could save a life just by asking. If you have any inkling or any of those warning signs, just asking a person about that a little more can help and can save a life. How you ask the question is not as important as asking. And find a phrase that you are most comfortable with. And that's where sometimes we can choose that or practice that if we feel that would be helpful. So there's a kind of a national recognized approach to how to speak to someone about their possible thoughts of suicide. It's called QPR. And it just kind of helps us to framework this process and gives us, it's not, a counseling or treatment, but just a way to offer hope and proceed with some positive action. So we'll kind of go through these steps. Just to point out that, go back here, that here's the website too, if you would like some more, and that will be included in the resources in the participant folder, if you would like to check information about this. So they call it a gatekeeper suicide prevention method. And the first step is to question the person about suicide. Ask if they have had any thoughts, feelings, or plans about not wanting to live. And of course, this is happening as you respond to those warning signs. Persuade the person to get help. Listen carefully and say, let me help. And persuade them to pursue help and refer the person to a suicide hotline, professional therapist, or call 911 if necessary. And we'll kind of go through each of these. So question, if in doubt, don't wait, ask the questions below. Of course, talk to the person alone in a private setting. Ask if the person needs an interpreter if necessary. Allow the person to talk freely. Remember, suicide is not the problem, only the solution to a perceived insolvable problem. How you ask is less important than asking, as we talked about. So here are some ways to ask. I am concerned about you. Are you having any thoughts about not wanting to live? Are you okay? Have you been unhappy lately? Even being very direct, have you been so unhappy or thinking about taking your life? If the person responds no, let them know you care and are willing to listen when needed. Offer resources to help. We have a resource list that will be included in the folder. So persuade, the first part of this is to listen to the problem. Give your full attention. Do not judge. Offer hope. If the person responds yes to any of the above questions, ask them, tell me more about your thoughts. How long have you felt this way? Have you thought about how you might take your life? If yes, do you have any intent on carrying out your plan? And so, then thinking about, after listening, helping this person talk through some of this and listening carefully, saying that your safety is of utmost importance to me. Will you go with me to get help? I want you to live. I'm on your side. We will get through this. It is important to keep you safe. There is a solution to every problem. Just offering them that hope. and then the refer. 988 is a suicide and crisis lifeline. That is a quick, easy way to get to some help fast. And they offer interpreters in 150 different languages, which is really amazing. So you would notify school, staff, family member, friend about your concern, ask for the number of a support person, and call them. So in this instance, if you get to this point and it's clear to you that this person needs help, help them contact someone who can support them. Get a commitment from the person to accept help, give the person referral information, or make the call for them. And we will include the resources that we have curated that can help with this in terms of different options for suicide and mental health resources. Follow up with the person or support person to make sure they are okay in seeking help. If they cannot assure you that they will not harm themselves, or if there's any inclination of a plan or intent to commit suicide, call 911. And that's important if you can tell that they're not, if they will not, assure you and they're not willing to get that help. Yeah. One thing that I like to have people do that in our Canvas course is to role play just what that situation is like, because it can make you a little more comfortable with talking about suicide. We're not going to do that today in a virtual environment. This is just something you can do more in a comfortable environment if you would like. And that's just this idea of, asking another teacher, family member, someone else that you can kind of take turns being the teacher or the student, just getting comfortable with that, using the suicide prevention guide handout, which will be included. You can practice. And so, we just have a scenario here that you can think of to help you move through it. And such as like a student in your class came to the US 7 years ago as a refugee. Her husband died 2 years ago. She feels alone, depressed, useless, and no longer respected as the elder of the family. And she tells you, I don't think life is worth living anymore. So it's just a situation, a made-up situation, but could be realistic for you to practice getting comfortable with that. Okay, so moving on to just kind of this idea of promoting hope and resilience. Resilience is the power to be able to recover readily from adversity or challenge. And fostering resilience has been shown to be very important to suicide prevention. It promotes healing and hope from pain. Factors that increase resiliency is like social support, including a sense of belonging and feeling valued, acceptance of what happened, finding meaning and purpose in life, a strong belief system, very important, and a willingness to seek treatment. So these are, resiliency is a very good way to promote hope and help build those, problem-solving skills. So promoting hope and resiliency, building relationships and trust increases that chance that a student will feel more comfortable reaching out in a time of crisis, such as considering suicide. So doing this in our classrooms or with students, connecting with and getting to know your students and encouraging student interactions and friendships. We know that that social support and social system can be really helpful to people that are feeling alone. And for example, some things we can do in our classrooms would be like peer interviews, right? Each student interviews another and then shares what they learned about the other student with the class. Highlight a student each week, making them feel special, helping others get to know them, or and you get to know them. Pairing students with a peer mentor. Establishing student classroom jobs such as greeting or helping with room setup. Making someone feel purpose can be really helpful. And teaching resiliency and problem-solving skills. What are some things we can do in the classroom to teach these things or to offer examples? So a growth mindset is when someone can put a positive value on a negative event. So helping learners understand that making mistakes is part of learning and part of growing. There's many examples of this, and many people who have overcome hardships have shared this idea that understanding that those hardships and making those mistakes help them to grow and learn. And so, that gives hope. Examples of teaching resilience and problem-solving skills could be, asking students to write about a time that they solved a problem in their life and how they overcame an adverse situation. Showing videos and websites with examples of resiliency and problem-solving skills. Looking at we have a teaching resilience and problem-solving skills handout with some more ideas and some good videos on there that are great for listening skills, but also, fostering resiliency and problem solving. And we will include that in the resources also. Sometimes, like one thing I do in my classroom, I'm also a teacher in Robbinsdale adult academic program, and reading about things like this with students, so maybe Malala, doing a reading on her and her story fosters that resiliency and helping having those discussions, having students maybe write about quotes that inspirational quotes, quotes of hope and of bouncing back after difficulties, those kind of things. So, that can be really helpful. Reading about how the brain works and how we learn and how the brain can change in different situations. How does stress affect us in our bodies and our brains? And then also, stress relieving things that we can do working, with even in our classroom. So maybe, music, yoga, taking breaks, deep breathing, some things that can offer students ways to deal with their own stress. So things we can do. All right, so I'm going to give you all a chance to talk through some of this.
And Erin, we're at 5 to 11.
Okay.
Or 5 to 12. And there were a couple of questions in the chat. One was wondering if there are any studies on high functioning depression and suicide rates. They may have all the right answers and to the questions and hide it better.
Okay.
And then also
Interesting.
people pointing out that if you're, instead of calling 911, cities often have behavioral crisis response teams in case there are concerns about calling the
Right.
police on someone having a mental health crisis.
Yes, that can be something to be concerned about, definitely. And I think more of, yeah, that would be wonderful. And so I should look into that a little bit more. I think the idea of 911 is last resort if you're really worried about their life. But yes, I do believe that there are crisis teams now um, that will deal more effectively with a mental health crisis, because I do know there's concerns about that with the police for sure. Yeah, definitely. And does anybody know, I know that 988 and there are some crisis lines, but as far as like when we're talking immediate reaction when we're afraid of for someone's life, I'm wondering if anybody does have information on that and can put that in the chat. That would be great. Okay. And we'll get a chance after breakout rooms also to share some of those ideas of ways to, deal with that. Okay, great. Thank you. I like that unarmed public safety behavioral crisis response. Thank you. Okay, well, yeah, 988 does have a chat function. And so I think that's good too. Great. Thank you for the resources. This is definitely something that I think is important that we all can share the resources that we know of together. And along with in our breakout rooms, we're going to get a little time here to share resources on how how to connect with and get to know your students. I know many of you are doing great things for that in your classrooms, and to share that with others would be really helpful. How to build resiliency skills. Maybe you're doing things that really build those resiliency skills for students. I think that's a really important thing to think about when we know that students have gone through difficulty, especially as well in all areas, but immigrants or refugees coming through. Some of our students are amazingly resilient, but continuing to foster that. And then how to teach problem solving skills. So and we're gonna get into breakout rooms, and I'd like to have you discuss these with each other, share your resources, the things you do in your classroom, on your program to foster these skills. That would be great. And then we'll come back and have time to share out a few ideas, because you guys are doing great things and have great ideas to share. So, Marissa, if we can.
Right.
Okay. Well, thank you. I hope that was productive and everybody ended up in a room. So I thought, and thank you the people that did share some resources. Some of those resources are on our resource handout, but really great things, and I'm glad that people are sharing those. And if they're not on our resource list, I will add them and look into anything that I am not aware of now at this point. So, okay, well, I'd like to share some ideas from the breakout because I know that you guys all have great ideas of how to do these in your classroom. So if you can put some of your ideas that you discussed in the chat, I would like to kind of share those out a little bit. I know we just have a few more minutes. So if anybody's willing to put that in, put it into the chat, that would be great. Or speak up if you'd like. Oh yeah, making sure mental health topics are included in a health unit. Very good. Yeah, often we're focused on physical health and mental health is just as important. Any others? Implementing growth mindset into our ABA classes. Teaching the power of yet. I love that saying. Checking in about students' emotions. I do a big thing on that in my mental health course of, different ways that we can do that, help normalize mental health struggles. Mental health lessons, well, I like that. I am ABE, yes, there's some good stuff there. Great. Recognizing coping strategies, good or bad. Recognizing those in our students when we see them and helping them to develop others. Very nice. Knowledge every student every time we see them. I think that's very important. That alone goes a long way. Greeting students, checking in with them, yes. Or check in with them on a weekly basis, maybe text or email. Very nice. Okay. Well, great stuff. I think we're about here at our time. If you want to add anything else, we can, put that into our resources. Let's see here. I've found the video to be a really positive way to view suicide prevention. I agree. Yeah, it's good to hear from people that have survived and are helping others. All right, any other questions? I saw the questions about high functioning depression and maybe suicide rates. I can look into that. I'm not sure. We know that oftentimes people do mask those signs or how they're feeling, and we may not have seen any of those signs. But it's definitely something to be aware of. So if there's any other questions, more research that are linguistically and culturally specific to populations that are often in adult ed. Okay, yeah. That's true. Good. Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate your feedback too and sharing of the resources. Because I think that's great for us all to do in ABE. So together as teachers and as we all are learning also, right? So thank you very much.